everyone. testing, testing.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Can this mic get turned up a little bit?
Check, check. I just turned it up. That's pretty loud. Can you hear? Hello, everybody. We're going to have a few speeches. So if I could get everyone to kind of move to my right, that way we'll get everybody in here.
Greetings, everyone. Continue to eat and drink and celebrate Eric. Please take a moment to look at your cell phones and be sure that they're muted. Welcome, everyone. Eric left this world in silence. Let's have a moment of silence to honor him. Wherever Eric is, he is thrilled to have all of you, the people he was connected to and loved, here today to celebrate his life. Sue and Ian also want to express their gratitude to all of you being here today and also extend a special welcome to Eric's twin brother, Mark, and his wife, Verlie, who have traveled from Illinois to be here. My name is Lois, and I am so honored to speak today on behalf of Eric. I met Sue in the late 1970s, and we have been fast friends ever since. Sue met Eric in 1984. They were married in 1989. In 1991, they had their son, Ian. I remember getting that call like it was yesterday, and I am so honored to be Ian's godmother all these years. In 2005, Eric was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He had a long struggle with the disease, though he never complained. He continued to live his life with integrity and grace. On August 20th, Eric passed away with Sue and Ian by his side. Those last few weeks prior to Eric's passing were a true blessing. I watched the three of them bond in a way unique to the sacred process of death. And what is it that dies, and what is it that cannot die? Eric's body has died. However, his spirit can never die, and he will forever live on in our hearts. Eric chose to donate his body to science for medical research. Let's take another short moment of silence to unite with the intention that medical science will find a cure for Parkinson's, as well as other diseases. I remember Eric in many ways. I remember his shirts. Occasionally too loud or bold, but I always voted him best dressed. I remember his music and what an exquisite pianist he was. Eric found playing the piano easy and natural. He never used sheet music. He simply played from his heart. I remember Eric's humor, the stories he would tell with a glimmer in his eye, and the slightest smile, always with a poignant punchline and dry wit. I remember his brilliant mathematical mind. He knew my car because after seeing it once, he had the license plate memorized. He was a master of numbers. I remember his compassion. Through his professional career as a counseling psychologist, he has helped countless people find a healthier path. And perhaps most importantly, I remember seeing the love in his eyes for his wife, Sue, and his son, Ian. Eric requested that three of his dearest friends speak at his memorial: Steve Johnson, Bruce Jacobson, and Margo Stevens. Between two of the speakers, Sean Wing, the son of Sue's cousin Debbie, will play the piano and sing Hallelujah.
Hello, my name is Steve, and I'm very fortunate to have been a friend of Eric's for the last 46 years. We both graduated from Reed College a year and a half apart, but we were only in residence there for one semester. A mutual friend introduced us, and we became friends very quickly. I'm sure I liked Eric for the same reasons you all did. He was smart, funny, creative, intellectually curious, sarcastic, but always very kind, very gracious. And he was like a force of nature, a fireball of energy, always doing 10 things at once, rarely sleeping. And I also liked him because he was a good bridge player and he liked classical music. I was a music major. We did a lot of things together that semester, including playing a lot of bridge. I graduated in December of '76, and Eric graduated a year and a half later. Since we both lived in Southern California, we were able to see each other a lot during that year and a half, during summers and school breaks. One of our more memorable experiences together occurred shortly after I left Reed. I was living at my parents' house in Santa Barbara, and Eric was visiting during his Christmas break. In the late afternoon, Eric and I hiked up a nearby creek to a 100-foot waterfall. For some reason, we became curious as to what was at the top of the waterfall, so we decided to climb up and find out. Since the canyon walls were very steep, we had to climb quite a ways above the top of the waterfall before we could get a small glimpse down at what looked like a pool, but we knew we had to investigate further. So we descended. I was in front, but since the walls were so steep, I was facing the mountain and I couldn't see either Eric or the pool we were trying to reach. Suddenly, I hear Eric scream, followed several seconds later by a loud splash. all I can think of is Eric falling into a fast-moving pool, getting swept over the top of the waterfall, falling 100 feet to his death. So I scramble down the rock as quickly as I can without paying any attention to what I'm doing. I find a very unhappy Eric bobbing in the middle of a large, calm, and very cold pool. So I fish Eric out of the pool, and we sit on a rock and wait for the setting sun to dry out his clothes so he can stop shivering. By a stroke of good luck, I've brought along a six-pack of beer. So even though he never got particularly dry, his attitude improved considerably. But now the sun is set and it's getting dark quickly. Time to hike back home. Unfortunately, I can't remember how I got down to the pool, so I can't retrace my steps. We spend the next 2 hours, most of it in the dark, unsuccessfully trying to climb back up and out. Eventually, we find a small ledge in a cliff about 75 feet above the pool, and we decide to spend the night. We are very cold. The nighttime temperature in the mountains is several degrees below freezing this time of year. So we try to think of what we most want to do when we get back tomorrow. We decide that what we want to do is go to España, a Mexican restaurant on the beach, and order several pitchers of margaritas. And it is that thought that gets us through the night. The next morning, we climb back down to the pool, where in the daylight we could see the way out. And of course, when España opened that day, Eric and I were already there, waiting to order our first pitcher of margaritas. Eric moved here in the fall of '78 to do his graduate work at the U, and during the next 11 years, we only saw each other a handful of times. But that all changed in '89. Eric and I had two mutual friends from Reed, Dave and Jack, who both lived in LA during the '80s and whom I saw quite a bit. Dave inherited a 2-acre piece of property in New Hampshire called Journey's End, which consisted of a main house with 5 bedrooms and a cabin with 2 more. What made the property special was the incredibly beautiful setting among the pines on Lake Sunapee. Journey's End had a large dock where Dave kept a wave runner, a power boat, a sailboat, and a canoe. So in 1989, Dave invited Eric and Sue, Jack and his wife and newborn son Jackson, and me to Journey's End for 3 days to play bridge, play with his water toys, and just generally have fun. Eric, Dave, Jack, and I all enjoyed that experience so much that it became an annual event. Almost every year for the next 20 years, the 4 of us and our families and quite a few friends came to Lake Sunapee during the week of July 4th for what became formalized as the Journey's End Bridge Tournament. I think Ian and my sons, Cale and Teague, all came to Sunapee before their first birthday. It was the summer vacation we all look forward to each year. We'd usually arrive on Tuesday, leave on Sunday. We'd play on the lake or take local field trips during the day. And at night, after dinner, we'd all sit around a large table and play games. Eric was the game master, and each year he would teach us new games and remind us of the games he taught us last year. Around 10 o'clock or so, Eric, Dave, and I would retire to the cabin for at least 4 hours of bridge. On Sunday, we tallied up the bridge scores for the week and had a ceremony honoring the new champion. Over the 17 bridge tournaments we had at Sunapee and the 8 we had at other places after Dave had to sell Journey's End, Eric won more often than Dave, Jack, and I because, frankly, he was a better bridge player. In 1995, both Eric and I were in pretty good shape when we arrived at Sunapee. We had each run a marathon that year and were used to a lot of physical activity. So we decided to have a triathlon, not a competitive triathlon. We just wanted to do 3 physically challenging things together for fun. So first we ran 5 miles through the town, then we took a chairlift to the top of the local ski resort and ran down the ski slope through the 4-foot-high grass as fast as we could. And then we swam from the Journey's End dock to the other side of the bay and back, which was about 1.5 miles. We were tired but very happy when we finally got back to the dock. Looking back, that summer was the peak of physical fitness for each of us. Eric was 40 and I was 41. And I'm sure if you had asked us, we would have told you that we would have continued to get faster and stronger every year for at least the next 15 years. But as it turned out, that was the peak. If we had known, I'm sure we would have wanted to mark the moment by doing something memorable, something like having a triathlon. So I'm very grateful that we inadvertently created a memory marking the fastest and strongest summer in our lives. In 1993, I brought Laura, my then girlfriend, later wife, to Sunapee. Eric, Sue, Laura, and I got along so well, we decided we should get together more often than just 1 week at Sunapee each year. And since then, we've seen a lot of each other. For 10 years or so, Eric and Sue and Ian spent every Thanksgiving week with us in California. And for some reason, it morphed into a week in summer and then other random times of the year. Laura and I also came here a few times. During spring break in 2005, we took a joint vacation to Zion. Ian was 14, Cale was 6, and Teague was 1. And it was on this vacation that Eric and I made our remarkable contribution to the field of mathematics. One evening, Eric was talking about his job as a tutor for the SAT and the LSAT and was mentioning he likes to teach his students the 2 whole number right triangles, 3, 4, 5, and 5, 12, 13. I was in one of those moods where I feel like saying something provocative, so I asked him why he didn't teach all the whole number right triangles. He replied there were only those 2. I told him I was sure there was a whole number right triangle for every whole number other than 0 or 1 and probably 2. Although, of course, I had absolutely no idea if this was true. So we decided to find out. We spent at least 3 hours working on it that evening without success. The next morning, I figured out the first half of the algorithm while I was lying in bed. I explained it to Eric at breakfast, and he quickly came up with the second half. If someone gives you a whole number greater than 2, the algorithm will generate 2 more whole numbers, and those 3 numbers will be the sides of a whole number right triangle. We were, of course, very impressed with ourselves, and Eric subsequently explained it to several high school math classes here in Salt Lake City. The algorithm is probably best used as a party trick, so if any of you are interested, come up to me afterwards and I'll explain it to you. Maybe you'll have an opportunity to impress somebody, which would undoubtedly make Eric smile. I want to conclude my remarks by saying just a little bit about the piano music Eric wrote. His first album, Love Unfolding, was released in '98 and dedicated to his mother, who had died that year. His second album, Expecting to Fly, was released in 2011 and dedicated to his father, who was battling Parkinson's. If you don't have one of the CDs, you can find 7 of his songs still on YouTube if you search for EJH, Eric Hanson, piano. I always liked his music. It is both visceral and creative, spiritual and comforting, and as someone who also writes music, I was struck by his process. Eric never wrote down any of his music. It existed solely in his head and the muscle memory of his fingers, which is difficult to imagine when you consider that he recorded close to 50 pieces and wrote perhaps another 20. Not surprisingly, Eric's pieces were a little different each time he played them. He was very good at improvising, which is why we loved it when he played the piano at our house. We have a player machine attached to the piano keys which can record and reproduce the keystrokes. Eric would sit down at our piano, and for 30 or 40 minutes, he would just play his music in whatever form it came to him that night. And our piano can now recreate those performances. I had a difficult time after my dad died in 2008, and one of the main things that helped me get through it was listening to the songs on Eric's first album. I kept the CD in my car, and for perhaps 6 months, I played it whenever I drove anywhere. Eventually, the 19 songs were permanently tattooed onto my subconscious. Somehow, Eric's music always helped me find my center and let me focus on my dad. So when Eric died, I put the CD in my car and tried to do the same thing to process my grief for him. Big mistake. Since his death, listening to Eric's music just completely overwhelms me with a flood of memories and feelings and sadness and emptiness. I'll have to try again in another month or so. I miss him so much.
David Wayne, and peace the Lord. You don't That was beautiful. Thank you. In the early fall of 1980, I walked into the tests and measurements class on my first day of graduate school and sat down next to another first-year student, and we began to talk. I thought to myself that this was the kindest, quirkiest, and most engaging guy I had ever met. So began a 42-year friendship that has transformed my life in ways I could never have imagined, and for which I'm eternally grateful. He invited me to dinner at his home that evening, and we talked and talked and talked well into the early morning hours. We had an immediate and natural bond. Talking for hours on end became a hallmark of our relationship. We never ran out of things to discuss. We talked about our favorite scenes from Harold and Maude, the inspiration behind one of his songs, the nature and complexity of human relationships, why the Lakers players wore their shorts drawstrings on the outside, the impact of our family of origin experiences, whether Blood on the Tracks was Dylan's best album, how to more effectively treat clients, NCAA basketball pool results, and the list goes on and on. The most time was devoted to helping each other try to better understand women, which we firmly agreed was a lifelong and ultimately futile endeavor. Moving across the country and beginning graduate school at 21 was very intimidating and overwhelming for me. More than once, I was unsure if I could do it. Eric offered encouragement and support every step of the way. His belief in me was unwavering and instrumental in helping me fight through my self-doubt to stay the course. He also eased the academic stress and pressure by being his unique and lovable self. When he showed up to personality theory class in our first year, in the midst of the season's first heavy snowstorm, wearing shorts and flip-flops, we all laughed, he smiled proudly, and our cohort immediately felt more relaxed and cohesive. Eric was all about relationship. In our first year, he organized a pickup basketball game of graduate students and faculty that played regularly for years. Yes, he was fiercely competitive, but what mattered the most to him was the sense of camaraderie and community we had. Similarly, he was the catalyst in pulling together a group of guys that played poker on and off for over 25 years. Yes, his intense gazes and impish grins reflected his great satisfaction in successfully bluffing us again and again. But he most enjoyed personally connecting with everyone there and having fun with the guys. Eric was the most accepting person I've ever met. He instantly connected with people with his disarming smile, affectionate eyes, and his expression of sincere interest and curiosity in others. Caring and warmth radiated from him. His generosity of spirit knew no bounds. He was kind to all and gave freely of himself to anyone in need, without expectation of anything in return. He brought out parts of ourselves that we didn't know existed and celebrated our unique selves. We felt seen and loved for who we are. This was Eric's gift to me and all who knew him. He was always positive about people and the future. While this was a little annoying at times, he helped me to see life as a glass half full. It took a while, but he finally convinced me that our only real limitations are self-imposed. He embraced life, and through his loving, adventurous, and fun-loving way of being, you couldn't help but want to do the same. He taught me to never stop being curious about and open to the beauty and wonder in others and in life. He also possessed a wonderful, ever-present sense of humor. It was very rare to have contact with him without sharing stories, jokes, and one-liners. He always enjoyed my jokes, even when he was hearing them for the umpteenth time. Well, at least he was too gracious to tell me otherwise. One of his most invaluable gifts was to help me take life less seriously. When you were happy, Eric was happy. When he saw Doris and me for the first time, since we had come back together, he was ecstatic and went to his piano and played one of his most beautiful compositions, Passion is an Open Sea. We have always deeply cherished his unceasing loving support of our family. As you know, he was a brilliant composer and pianist. His music touched the deepest parts of ourselves. He had a song for every emotional experience. I had the pleasure of listening to this very creative and talented man's transcendent music, both in person and on his CDs, for endless hours over the years. And each time I am transported to a new and special place. I never tire of hearing Sushi Waltz. He approached his career as a psychologist in the same manner as he approached life. Eric believed that his clients deserved nothing but the best he had to offer, and that is what he gave them. Early in our careers, we worked together for a time with a challenging clientele and later with shared clients. I saw again and again how he encouraged, affirmed, challenged, and humored clients in ways that left them feeling he really got them and that all would be okay. He was especially effective in connecting with and helping more difficult to engage clients who had not responded to prior treatment. Over the years, he made an enormous difference in the lives of untold clients and families through his abundant warmth, caring, understanding, guidance, and acceptance. Parkinson's is a wretched disease. It is cruelly ironic that this very mentally and physically gifted man had to progressively lose his brilliant mind and strong body in such a heartbreaking way. For as long as possible, he refused to let the disease define and control his life. I was in awe of his resolute courage and dignity in the face of so much suffering and loss. He worked hard to do all he could to stay as healthy as possible, as long as possible. He told me this was because he wanted to share life and love with Sue and Ian as long as he could. And because he worried about how his decline would affect them. Sue, you were the love of his life. The happiest times in his life were with you. Soon after you started dating, Eric couldn't stop talking about this beautiful and wonderful woman he'd met, and that he knew you two were going to be together. You touched his heart in ways no one else did. It was a lot of fun to watch the many ways you two had fun together and loved each other. No one can know the depths of the sadness and helplessness you felt as you watched the suffering and decline that Eric endured over 17 years. But he shared with me more than once how grateful he was for your exceptionally loving and devoted care of him. Your tireless, tender, and loving care comforted him and eased his suffering. All who knew Eric were well aware of his deep love, pride, and adoration of his son Ian. He was over the moon about you from the beginning, and those feelings never waned. When I saw him with you, his immense joy and affection for you were very apparent and very heartwarming. While I know that you miss him more than words could ever express, all of us see your dad's remarkable spirit in your kindness, compassion, humility, generosity, and acceptance with others. Simply put, like your father, you are an extraordinary man. I miss my dear friend immensely. I miss his exceptional mind. I miss his boyish excitement. I miss his warm and knowing smile and look that said, I get it, and I'm here for you. I miss watching March Madness with him. I miss our long talks about identity, conformity, and freedom. I miss his infectious laugh. I miss seeing him at the piano. I miss his strong yet tender spirit. I miss his hugs. I miss seeing him with his beautiful family. Most of all, I miss my buddy's steadfast love and treasured companionship. Goodbye, Eric. I will always be grateful for our precious friendship. I will carry you with me forever. I love you. May you finally rest in peace.
I want to read a poem that Eric wrote. It's called Gratitude. It's on this card, and there is a basket with these cards at the door, so if you didn't get one, please pick one up. He wrote this in 2005, the same year he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Gratitude. Gift of Parkinson's I cannot often see, reflected in the sky of my humility. At every turn, a helping hand, a smiling face, taken freely, softly, without a trace of icy pride, a monster of my fright that steals my dreams in slumber of the night. Unlock the sounds of silence, make trumpets call, declaring love and peace to each and all. Ere life has passed, our love surrounded by a wall.
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here to speak to you about my dear friend Eric. I may be covering some similar territory, but I think we can all agree that Eric bears repeating. Eric and I met while working at Valley Mental Health at a residential treatment unit program for people suffering with serious mental illness. It was called R2ARTU. I remember being in the interview and liking him instantly, but also feeling a bit curious about his quirkiness. On his first day of work, he showed up in a suit and tie, while the rest of us were in dress Levi's and polo shirts. And then there was a day that he came to work with tissue paper stuck all over his face and said that he had been shaving and vacuuming that morning. Who vacuumed in their 20s and who did those things together? Yeah, Eric, yeah. Eric and I had the great fortune of being paired to do group therapy in the infamous greenhouse on 7th East and South Temple. We so rocked those groups, yeah. This was the beginning of the soul connection that Eric and I enjoyed for the next 38 years. And also when he started calling me Margo Wargo, a nickname one of our shared patients called me. What I'm striving to speak to today is how Eric fostered this same kind of connection with all of you and everyone he encountered. From bank tellers who knew him by name and would ask, "How many $2 bills would you like today, Eric?" to the deep affirmation he held for his wife Sue and his son Ian, and their extended families. An anchored devotion that ran through everything else in his life. Eric's ability to connect went beyond his education and his amazing intellect and landed where he lived, always present in his heart. Eric's nuances were many, as we've heard, with the quality of impishness. I think we might have all used that word, yeah. Eric was masterful in generating intimacy in relationship, whether through humor, sincerity, inclusiveness. He gently invited you to share a vulnerability and then never forgot it, bringing it back up with a tease or a wink or a twinkle, or what I always said, his sideways insights, that let you know you were heard and special, and that he and you shared this moment fully and would build on it the next time you were together. Eric ignited a spark of healing in the people he touched, helping them see their own truth, an ember of transformative hope. Sometimes his rose-colored glasses could be a little annoying, because all you wanted to do was vent, you know. But ultimately, you knew Eric was on the right track with his invincible optimism. With his patients, Eric was like Carl Rogers, exhibiting an authentic, unconditional, positive regard, but with this ability to dive in fully and without hesitation, frequently in an unconventional manner, as many of us were witness. Eric saved many lives. Much of Eric's ability to connect came through his beloved piano. Anytime he spotted a piano in a restaurant, a care center, or as Ian remembers, at a train station during a recent trip to Paris, he would beeline over and relish the opportunity to play. He also volunteered for many years at the U of U Medical Center, playing piano in the lobby. Wherever Eric played, people would flock, drawn to the transcendent connection that Eric created. His compositions had meaning and depth, written to celebrate life and family, or to grieve the loss of a loved one. He frequently wrote and played original compositions at services for those he loved. I will forever be touched by how he offered this gift to me and my family after my father passed in 1988. Amazingly, he composed For the Roses in Your Heart with only 3 days' notice. Another place Eric connected through music was sharing his favorite songs and artists. He created some powerful and eclectic mixes. With Eric, it was about sitting down and taking in every word. To marvel at a piece of musical brilliance or some insanely good lyric with Eric was to enter into a deeper world of shared meaning. I looked so forward to our yearly opera dates. The challenges of the last many years have been great as Eric's world grew more difficult. Sue, with her energetic zeal, made sure Eric attended outdoor concerts, picnics up the canyon, trips to Flaming Gorge and Moon Lake, and inviting friends over for dinner when Eric couldn't get out much. She made it fun to do Power for Parkinson's exercises, which might include a rare dirty look if she pushed him too far. Ian had a sweet and calming influence on his dad, who would light up like a light bulb whenever Ian entered the room. He used humor to lighten up situations, like asking his dad how the bookcase was when he heard his dad had fallen into it. Yes, he and his dad shared a natural affection for one another. In addition, Eric's many loving caretakers over these past few years felt this same exchange of kindness, witnessing his fortitude and feeling blessed to know him. Over the process that we came to call Eric's final love unfolding after the name of the CD, there was also grace unfolding, forgiveness unfolding, and finally peace unfolding when Eric took his last breath in the early morning with Sue and Ian by his side. Let's all take a moment to remember Eric's sweet smile and twinkle in his eyes and shine that light back to our beloved Eric as he continues his path of love unfolding. We love you, Eric, and we'll miss you deeply. This completes the formal remembrances. Let's go eat and drink and celebrate a life well lived.
Yes.